Daddy, look at the gigantic tree. Look.
That is a really big tree. That's why I'm filming it, yeah. Look at that big tree.
Ooh, good morning. Who doggy? We are live. We are live. I'm not ready for this, but that's all right. You're not ready for this? Boom, 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 boom. That's probably not what you want in your ears this morning. Sorry about that. So yeah, links in the chat. Feel free to hop on and come on. Got a few thoughts. Um, and I'm just gonna do. I'm gonna continue my exploration in clouds. Well, sharing my thoughts. And if anybody wants to come on and join, you are more than welcome to. Please, life's better in conversation. So you don't need my monologuing in the morning. But while we're at it, here we go. So at the end of last morning show, let's see, we had Brett's stream. There's Claire and I, and I was explaining to Claire grace, right? Because there was the thing in Father, what's his face's name, DeYoung, and with Tucker, and DeYoung said, right, churches need to be more hospitals than courtrooms. And part of Claire's idea is that we have a set of laws, common laws we could all agree upon, and we go through, and if we all agree to the same thing, the common law that guarantees our First Amendment rights and rights to due process, and everybody's held accountable to the same thing, then things will go splendidly. Will go smoothly. Saying it's not the law that changes us. It's grace. It's the grace of God. And morning, Goldsby. And I think this is hard for her to understand. And usually what she ends up saying when we talk about grace, and I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, is then, right, the idea that if you have grace, if you have free amounts of grace, then you have, then it's going to lead to inaction. Well, she has two criticisms of it, right? First is inaction. So she'll say, so you just want to sit there and do nothing. And you're just going to let, things pass by. Well, that's a misunderstanding of the application of grace. And she even brought it up, right? Talking about cheap grace and costly grace, right? when you love somebody, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, it's amore. And when it does that, it causes you to want to do um, it causes you to want to live differently because you are no longer the apple of your eye. Your life is not the end all be all. Instead, right, there is another. And that other then becomes what some might say your North Star, your purpose for being, your reason, right? And in that, right, that's where our grace comes in because we realize that we, both collectively and individually, are the apple of God's eye. We are the pinnacle of His creation. And we, through grace, through the allowance of grace, we're able to come and come before Him. And it provides change. It provides the change that they want to see. It changes our hearts and our minds. And it leads us to action. It leads us to action. Not because, thank you, Claire. See, just a sec. Let me try to get these thoughts out while I can because I'm easily distracted, as you know. So, see, now I'm easily distracted. Right, so grace does not lead to inaction. In fact, if rightly understood, grace should lead you to greater action. It should give you a freedom and a liberty to be able to get on the things that you're wanting to do, to go out into the world and love, and understand you don't have to be perfect. So you can go and try to love as best as you can without fear of consequences of running into people so you can do that. And yes, the state grows larger. The state can tell you, no, you can't do that. In fact, I was in a state. Oh, is it bad audio? Okay. Is that better? I don't know. You guys tell me. Bad audio? Good now. Okay. Claire's saying yes, it's bad audio. Or are you saying yes, it's good now? Waiting on that. Waiting. But we didn't hear what you said when the audio was bad. Oh, okay. I don't know where I left off. So grace makes you go and be better, aim higher. So I'll come back to that. I think I kind of lost that thread. But the second critique, and you can clarify this in a second. I'll let you give you a chance. Second critique is that love is too high of a standard. It's too lofty. It's not concrete enough. Not concrete enough in terms of how we should act and how we should act. And so the thing is, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a base set of laws and a way to organize your society. 100%. Your society should have base laws. It should be organized in a good and rational way if you so can and desire. Um, I'm all for establishing good laws, good judicial systems, and executing those correctly and rightly. I think organizing them around the Quran is a not a great idea. I know there's gonna disagree with me on that, but that's not the point of grace, right? And that again, the point is transformation, societal and personal. Well, societal transformation comes through the transformation, the personal transformation of the actors within the society, right? And it is only by the personal transformation of the actors within the society that the society changes. How do individuals change? They change through the power of grace and love. Right? That's how we bring about change. It's not about laws. And this comes back to the point of right, right. So this comes back to the point of Jean Valjean versus Javert in Les Mis. And this is why I asked her to go watch it. I don't think she did, or she did was kind of just the Cliff Note version or something. But anyways, go hear the musical. And her takeaway was that it was a critique of the rule of law and that Javert was the bad guy. And that's not true. Javert was pitiable, right? He was the one that we should feel sadness for. Like I felt, I through Javert's storyline, I feel sadness. I feel I feel that he's so close and he works so hard and he does such a good thing and he's a good guy. Like he's trying to do what's right. And yet he comes, yes, I know Les Mis is fiction. A lot of the world is fiction, but that's what all stories are, fiction, right? That's what we have are stories, right? They tell us something. They tell us things that are happen in life and allow a mirror to hold it up to ourselves and say, hey, this story says something. Can I, you know, what does it say? What's it saying? And how is that impacting my life? And some stories are just simple stories, right? Some stories are Gosling the goose, right? Or Birdie the gosling, and they have little adventures splashing in puddles, right? Those are simple stories. Sometimes telling you how to be a good friend, right? But other times there's complex stories, and those complex stories um, help us understand things, right? Again, this is what we're talking about, right? I don't think it's not me growing up, right? I think it's you, right? Right? Like the fact that you only read a story on a certain level, right? That makes me sad for you. Like I'm not mad, I'm not angry. Like you tell me to grow up, but I'm sad. Like we learn so much through stories, right? And so I say that the person Javert is pitiable because, right, he lives by the law, but he didn't he didn't think that is as you live by the law, it allows for change, right? Once a thief, always a thief. That's what he says. Once a thief, always a thief. And that's what Jean Valjean was. He was a thief. He broke the window pane, stole the bread, had to go into jail, do his time. And you know what? But what changes him? It's the grace of the bishop who gives him extra, right? He steals from the bishop and then the bishop gives him extra. When the court of law comes due, and this is what we were talking about yesterday, right? The court of law came due. The police picked him up and took him to the bishop's house, and the bishop said, "Hey, you know what? Not only did I give him that silver, I gave him. He left the biggest pieces of silver, right?" And sorry, I'm having bad audio. I know. Biggest pieces of silver, and after the police leave, right, the bishop says, hey, I've done this for you, Now go and make your life worth living, right? And and so he says he's bought his soul for God. I think that's a bad thing, bad idea. But basically, he's given him abundant grace where he has no more excuses and he could go out and live. Um, and so as he's going out to live, right, that changes him. He goes through a whole existential crisis, and there's a lot of songs on there, and it changes him. And his story isn't finished changing, right? There's more parts to it, and there's greater parts to it. Um, but sorry, Chad, I don't know what to do. Um, it is what it is, and so Jean Valjean. So then Javert is doing his job, right? He's living by the rules, he's living by the laws, and you're supposed to respect that. You're not supposed to think it's bad. Um, yeah, so now I'm not gonna let you on. Sorry, Claire, you lost your chance. If you're gonna call me names and go all caps on that, then that's not okay, right? That's what my little child does when he's having a temper tantrum. And when my little child has a temper tantrum, I don't give him what he wants. It's an automatic no, right? If he starts throwing a fit, it's automatic no. I'm sorry. I really wanted that conversation. Let's try again another time. Okay. Um, and so, uh, Ja, and so, um, so Javert is doing the right thing. He's greeting. He's a good character, and you're supposed to like him. But you're supposed to say, hey, he's only seeing the world through this one paradigm. The one paradigm is the law, and and the law is good. The law needs to be enacted, and he has a proper place in the society, but he doesn't see the bigger picture. And so, um, and so as the and so when he and so when he comes into contact with Jean Valjean, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to live a life. He doesn't understand how grace works. And so he thinks Jean Valjean is running some sort of scam. He's running some sort of scheme. He doesn't think Jean Valjean can change, but Jean Valjean has changed because of grace. And again, Javert doesn't understand that. And so you pity Javert because he's doing the best he can and he's living his life the best he can. But Jean Valjean has changed and it's changed by grace. And so then at the end, when they're meeting in the tunnels, and Jean Valjean has been changed by grace and he's loving somebody else sacrificially, he put his life out on the line to get um, I'm blinking on the guy's name now, but the guy who's eventually going to be his son-in-law, right? Marius, right? He's carrying Marius. Marius is injured, and he's carrying him away from the battlefield, and he runs into Javert, and not only does he run into Javert, but he gave Javert his life, right? Javert had been captured, and he gives Javert his life, and Javert doesn't understand it, right? When he comes to free him, he's like, "Oh, how right you would come attack me with a knife," and Jean Valjean's like, "You don't understand, like you've never understood," right? And he cuts him free and lets him go, and Javert doesn't know what to do with grace. He doesn't know how to handle it because it doesn't fit into his world paradigm. And so then when he meets him again into the tunnels, right, by law, Javert should have fought Jean Valjean to keep him from escaping. But Javert extends grace to Jean Valjean in the tunnels, right? And in his extending of grace, he doesn't understand why he changed. He doesn't understand the grace that he gave to Javert and to Jean Valjean. And in that, right, he couldn't reconcile it with the rest of his worldview, right? And that's where he comes to the end of himself. It's because he's not able to to incorporate the idea of grace. And he just extended it. He just broke the rules. He broke the rules to let this person who's obviously changed, go and save another person's life because that's the greater rule, right, than the actual rule of the law. And he understands it on one level, but the rest of his life and body don't understand that. And that's why we pity him. That's why we're sad for him. That's why I cry almost every time, right? The end of Javert's story, I'm like almost weeping. Like I don't hate him. I love him, and I feel so sorry for him. Right? That's the story of grace. Right? That's the story that grace can change us and to move us. And I think as part of your system, right? Having your system is perfectly fine. And I don't think most of us here, I mean, we probably not rather live under the Koran, but if it's a well organized system that allows freedom of expression and things, then, you know, hey, a system's a system, different governance, different governance. And so it's not a, it's not an issue of that. It's an issue of like, that's not going to change society once you have your system in place, right? The ills that still affect our society are still going to be affected, which actually brings me to another kind of conversation. Yeah, laws don't really change society, right? Because society made it individuals, and individuals are sinful and broken, and the only thing that affects sinful and broken people are bouts of grace and love. That's how I interpret things, and that's how I think it, right? So I didn't delete all of your comments, so I don't know how that happened. So, anyways, um, you basically describe the principles at work. Let's see. You basically describe the principles at work in 12 steps. All right. God's grace. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Mm, grace for grace. All right. Infinite is more than he could handle. About Javert. Yeah, yeah, he didn't understand it. Mm. So go ahead, and if you're wanting to come on, Claire, unfortunately, you know, you had your little temper tantrum, so we can't do that. You can stay in the comments, that's fun. But if other people are wanting to come on, you're more than welcome to do that. And otherwise, I'm going to keep trying. Oh, and as I'm doing, I'll keep expanding on my idea of, right, a part of our understanding and needing to live in grace is the fact that we need to, part of it's based off our name, right? Da, da, da. So yesterday, Franklin Booth, yeah, so this is the one. I'm gonna mute that. Defining grace in one sense is not a fair thing to do, right? I'm not a good definitional person. I like Franklin Booth, right? Again, that's why I use the story of Les Mis, because for someone like me who has a hard time, and you'll say, right? You say, Eric, just get to the point. I'm sorry. Sorry. It's not how my brain works. That's why we have story. So my definition of grace is the story I just explained of Jean Valjean interacting with Javert. That's the story. I don't know. Random guy. Kidding. Me too. So, so my son the other day, I'm trying, one of the most important things I think we could teach is to not lie. I think even Claire would agree with that. And so I'm I'm telling him, right, the one of the greatest things he could do is to have a good name, and with that, right, having a good name, because that's worth more than gold is your name. And because he's going through a phase where he likes to tell tall tales, and I'm afraid he's going to be in a situation where people are going to start not believing him, um, because he'll have a reputation of telling tall tales. And but having a good name also just isn't about telling the truth. It's about our actions as well. Like if our actions are incorporating part of our actions are matching what we're saying, right? That is part of having a good name as well. And I just listened again to Mark Parker's stream that he did a few days ago, where Ryan got on and they were talking. And part of that, I think part of Mark Parker's issues, and I'm not saying it's all of it, and he'd probably say he has more different ones, is that he's he's looking at the churches and he's looking at what Jesus taught, and he's like, where's the church that corresponds to what Jesus taught? Yeah, I agree. It's an intelligent question. I fully agree. Yeah, I'll highlight that too. When you ask something good, when you participate in a good way, I, I'll acknowledge that. Yeah, he's asking good questions, and he's saying, why is the church writ large, right? All the denominations, all the manifestations of different Christianity, like we don't always we have a bad name in a lot of situations. In a lot of situations, we have good names, and people don't under. I think that's underappreciated as well. That sometimes we have good names. A lot of the hospitals within the U.S., because it's not a were started by different denominations, and I would love to see the church become more involved with healthcare in the United States as well. That's a different topic, and I'm not going to get into that one right now. But um, but you look and the church is full of bad and sinful people, and that's part of our name, is that we have this aspect of us, um, and and we don't do a good job at a admitting it, and b kind of addressing that, like, and saying, hey, we understand that we put this guy in charge. Usually it's a guy, but sometimes it's ladies. Put this guy in charge, and he ended up doing really bad and hideous things. How do we address that? How do we reconcile that to the people who are victims? How do we enter into a process of forgiveness and of accountability? Though, see, Claire, it's not just doing nothing, right? If a pastor's bad, he should be removed. Um, if he's doing things that he shouldn't be doing, right? There are rules and there are laws, and we need to hold each other accountable, right? But that's not what brings change, right? Accountability is not what brings change. It's accountability is what helps us love each other well, right? It allows us to love each other well, but it does not bring change. Um, and and so um, and so we've done that poorly, and I think that's again part of Mark Parker's issue, is like we have a bunch of people and denominations that have bad names. And where do we go as a church? Where do we go to get a good name again? Where do we go? And so that's why with Protestants, you see them splitting all the time. because they're like, well, this congregation obviously wasn't living up to loving Christ is loving each other as Christ has loved us. And so how do we so we need to split away from them because they're bad. They're not doing right, and they're bringing a bad name. They're not being what you need. Yeah, Christians do need accountability, big time. Let me add that here. Brett had a good one too. Right, grace Christ gives us is merciful because we don't deserve it. 100%. Yeah, Claire, you had another good point. So Christians do need accountability. I misread it. Christians do need accountability. Yeah, yeah. In fact, we should be held to the higher standards, right? We should be. There's a term when I was in ministry. They used to be above reproach, right? And so you don't put yourself into a room with just the lady and you and another lady, and if there's no knowledge of you going in with there, right, and being all secretive, right, maybe nothing happened. Maybe you talked about PowerPoints and serving popcorn to people, right? But you got to be above reproach, and there needs to be either that door needs to be open so that anybody could pop in. There needs to be um, higher levels of accountability, right? That's why with many ministries now and in the U.S. with youth, you're not allowed to be in a adult worker helper. Can't just give a ride to a kid to their house because we've grown in our accountability. And yeah, yeah. Chad says accountability, uh, in my opinion, is something I adhere to, not top down. It's my responsibility and honesty, not punitive. Right? Yeah, yeah. I'm choosing to be open, choosing to hold myself accountable. And when you come into organizations or churches that don't have that aren't choosing that, then you need to talk to. There needs to be that discussion amongst the hires up, and if they're not, then you need to be really careful with that because our name matters. And how do we go about getting ourselves a name, a better name, right? How much? I was watching that thing Chad was talking about. I went and watched it just a little bit, and with the ortho, and I'm like, that's not the name that we want. Like their actions are not the type of name that we're wanting, and I don't think they realize that, and so that makes me. That's kind of. I've already used sad a couple times, so I don't want to use sad again. But I'm like, man, that doesn't seem right. It says, "You're never gonna get this clear until your heart's changed. But if you don't want to change it, continue to shake your fist at it." Right? Yeah, continue to be in dialogue with God. Never stop. Always keep seeking truth. That's a good one. I don't know what you're talking about, but that's true. I'm not the only one with the problems. I got lots of problems. I got tons of problems. Oh, doggy. I got more excuses. I don't have any excuses. Yeah, embarrassed. Yeah, embarrassed. That's a good one. Embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for them and for us because they're part of the greater Christian community, right? They see that we're part of that, and what? How do we get back our name? And I think that's kind of what Parker's getting at is, and I'm not saying it's the only thing. He'll probably has a lot of nuance. Sorry if I got that. I'm not I'm disappointed. Yeah. I know we kind of change it. That's been like a joke, but there is truth to that. Like there's times where yeah, there are times where it's like as a parent or as a teacher or as anybody interacting with others that you are an authority over, and they make a choice, and you're like, man, like you're gonna have to deal with the consequences of that choice, and I'm sad for you. Like I'm disappointed because it's like that was, that was a really bad choice. Uh, but I'm not gonna be angry. Those natural consequences are gonna be enough to make it right. That's a deflation, a big exhale. Yeah, big exhale. Oh, I had a poem for you guys today. Well, kind of poem. Um, I forgot to read it. Got so distracted. So this one's called reading reading a book during service. It's a rough draft. So up front, then people brought little children to Jesus. Beside, page up front, for him to place his hands on them, and besides, page flip up front, pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Beside, page flip up front. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me." Beside, page flip up front. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of beside, page flip up front. Heaven belongs to such as these. When he had beside, page flip up front, placed his hands on them, he went on from there, book on my lap, up front. Let us pray. Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Tug on my sleeve, whisper in the ear. Dada, what's the name of this dinosaur? That was inspired. That's a story inspired by real life events. Inspired by that. So, um, yeah, I think it just reminds us, yeah, there. What's the term they use? The different layers. I always get that one wrong. Um, I never really came across it until fractal. I came across it, but just in different like fractals. It's fractal. Giving us, let us not keep the little children. How do we get back that name? Um, to you do a poetry slam someday. Yeah, I mean Sherry's got a lot. She can do it well. Ethan's got some good stuff too. Rigel, he's got a lot of good stuff. So so that'd be good. I don't think I'd do all right. Kind of running out of steam, so I guess you just watch if someone doesn't. You want to come on? Can I keep drawing though? Um, I guess I could just keep asking questions until I get a better understanding. Sorry for the phone. If you can hear it, probably not. Can't hardly hear me. So I'm working on these clouds, and one side, so the sun. So in this picture, the sun's coming from that way, and you got these clouds, and she's doing the booth thing, or she's trying to do booth. Uh, I don't know if a fully grasped Booth because like that picture that I had on the thumbnail, like that was Booth. He has these big sweeping lines. She kind of chops them up a little bit. I think this is actually more of a Booth esque thing going on right here. But as the sun comes against the cloud this way, this is where I often run into troubles. Is how to get these back shadows coming off this way. And what I wrestle with a lot is in drawing of clouds is how to convey the whiteness, right? It's not the dark shadow regions. And maybe that's my issue is to convey dark shadow regions you need, or to convey the whiteness, you need to get the shadows right. And so maybe I don't get the shadows right. There you go. There's your law for you, right? The law helps us understand where the shadows are, understand the rightness of that, right? And to understand contrasts, right? Holds it up, and let's see. There should be more coming in here somewhere on that. See, the cloud doesn't look sequential like that, so that's not super good, but that's all right because hey, like old let's face, oh, Bob Ross used to say, right? No mistakes, only happy accidents. I don't think this cloud's going to turn into a beautiful cloud, but that's all right. That's all right. Not all clouds have to be beautiful clouds. Not all clouds are beautiful. Some are ordinary, but there's beauty in the ordinary too. And some are disfigured drawings. So, but yeah, there's a lot to be learned from art, and in the process of trying to do art well, just for the fun of it, right? I used to find going to church sometimes a big drag, and especially listening to the sermons, because I'd fall asleep, and so like the whole time it'd just be a big struggle to not fall asleep because I have issues with once I'm sitting, I naturally just kind of fall asleep, and oh, don't be afraid. I'm okay to drive. Driving, I'm actually doing something, and so it's a little different. And so, but then I just gave myself the freedom to like color and draw during service, and that like made all the difference. Like I started out by coloring the little children's coloring books, and there was just freedom in it, and I was just like, I don't care if people, I just reached a point where I was just like, this helps me focus. This helps me pay attention. Right? This helps me do the thing that we're coming to do, to listen and to be a part of the community. And I would go back, and sometimes I'd say the drawing, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes it'd just be momentary pieces of art. But if I did say that, oftentimes I could recall better what the sermon was about than if I had just been listening, just passively listening. I'd be like, oh, I remember as I was drawing this, he was talking about this issue, right? Or we were discussing this story. And sometimes I'd even try to just to incorporate what was going on in the sermon. Sometimes not. Sometimes there'd be a passage I would have read at a different time in the day, and or a different part of the week. And I would now draw something from that. I love doing the landscapes. Doing people and clothing is a lot harder for me. I'm still working on that, as you saw with my beautiful hands from last time. So yeah, it's looking all right. I was working on this hatching over here that she had earlier, and I've never been good at hatching. I really wanted to increase my ability at hatching. So we had this one that was going up like that. Like my lines, I'm never happy with my lines. I guess it's kind of a, I sound like a little teenage girl. I'm never happy with my bows on my hair. I guess they should probably go more at this angle. There we go. That's all right. There we go. For a little while, I took up calligraphy. I liked it, but again, it just requires such practice, right? Such practice of the letters and just doing it 1,000 times. That brings me back to the discussion of love, right? Even though I know this is going to trigger Claire. Sorry, Jean Valjean was changed in that moment of grace with the bishop. He still wasn't perfect. He still wasn't perfect, and um, and so he when he was operating the mill, he had a situation where one of his workers was not being treated correctly, but he didn't know that. He didn't take the time to stop and to hear the person's story, to hear what was going on, and he made a bad uh, judgment. Right, he made a bad legal judgment there, and so that had drastic consequences on this character's life. And and so then he eventually comes to realize that, but it's not. So he still had room to grow, and he still had room to to make mistakes and um, to grow on that, right? So again, he had, and in that case, right, he had a good name, and then somebody came to him and said, "Hey, I'm I'm being I'm being repressed in a way, right? Uh, I'm there's an injustice happening here. Help me." And he ignored the character, and and he felt that that besmirched his name, and so then he felt to rectify that, right? That precipitates the rest of the story, right? And him adopting Fontaine. Laws don't prevent people from falling into sin. That's our fundamental disagreement, right? Our fundamental disagreement is that laws do not prevent people from falling into sin. They give clear boundaries as to what's socially acceptable and what's socially not acceptable, and gives clear delineation for the rules and those who are in power, who have the ability to have the monopoly on force to enforce them, and they give the framework for which a clear society can operate. But it's not to prevent people from falling into sin, right? Learning learning how to love and to care for people is what prevents people from falling into sin, because we're going to, no matter what. So I got these. I do these like puffy clouds. I've really been wanting to work on like the non-puffy clouds, like the more stringy clouds. Like, and I'm trying to figure out like how to kind of incorporate them again, because you're gonna need with it. I'm thinking you need like the backdrop of the sky, because the sky has color. It's not white like a cloud. And then you have and then you have um, the outline, but sometimes the outline isn't color, right? Sometimes it's white, sometimes it's really bright white, and then inside it starts to become more colored. And so that's where I think my hatching needs to increase. So I'm trying to draw a cloud here, rough, maybe change color. So roughly I'm trying to draw a thin wispy cloud coming like this, and coming through here this way, but only with black and white ink, but it's not really working pretty well. So let's erase that on there. Mhm. Working on my wispy clouds. Fun wispy clouds. 'Cause again, I got these puffy clouds, and I'm not saying I'm perfect on my puffy clouds. Definitely not. But I got a workable puffy cloud. Look at it. Probably. I forgot to have breakfast first, so maybe I'm just uh, that the manifestation of my hunger. I'm hungry too. Focaccia pizza. Oh, that's funny. On that, yeah. There you go. Yeah. Again, Claire, you have some ideas, and they're good ideas. I just don't want to address them in this one. I'm gonna have a econ after dark tonight, and especially that usury one you've been asking. And so that would be a great time to kind of address that, the econ after dark stream. Um, and so we'll have that. Um, all right. Thanks, Chad. Have a great day. Um, so yeah, I think I'm gonna be winding down here. That way I'll give you a few minutes to grab a cup of coffee or some food. I know some of you are hungry. Looking at my focaccia pizza up here that I drew. Beautiful focaccia. Acacia. Um, so um, let me grab a bite before the Chris Howard show. So have a great day, everybody. Grace and peace.